On this panel with all these amazing speakers, including Andrew, who showed Americans what is possible when he ran for president. So thank you for doing that. Let me start off by just telling you how I view AI from a perspective of a legislator. And I think the best analogy is two oceans of water, or two bodies of water, a huge ocean of AI and this small lake of AI. So this huge ocean of AI is all AI we don't care about. So if your smart toaster has a preference for English muffins over wheat toast, we don't care about that. So in this small lake of AI is the AI we do care about. And to me, there's sort of three buckets. The first, and I'll start with the most extreme, is AI that can destroy the world, right? So the Department of Defense has what are known as automated weapons, weapons that launch autonomously. I introduced bipartisan legislation earlier this year to basically say, no matter how amazing AI gets, we will never let it launch a nuclear weapon by itself. There must be a human in the loop. The second bucket is going to be AI that isn't going to destroy the world, but can kill you individually. So when your cell phone is malfunctions, it's not going 50 miles per hour. But when a Tesla in full automated driving mode malfunctions, or any other vehicle in AI mode malfunctions, people can die and have died. And so there's a lot of AI in moving objects, right? Planes, trains, automobiles. So I think we need more regulators who are more attuned to the unique aspects of AI to look at this new generation of products. And then the last bucket is the largest and hardest to deal with, which is AI that does have a preference that we do care about. So facial recognition, for example, is amazing technology. It recognizes faces better than you or I. It's also worse for people with darker skin. So if we deploy this nationwide at law enforcement agencies, to me it's a huge equal protection violation, right? It will cause minorities like us to be misidentified at higher rates. And, right, with generative AI now, you can go on ChatGPT or Google's Bard or Microsoft Bing and type in, why is the Battle of Midway such a critical battle in World War II? They pop out an essay and then you submit it to your teacher. So it causes societal disruptions along those lines. By the way, my wife Betty is here. She has the hardest job in elected politics. She's a school board member. And she was also recently appointed to the Special Education Commission in the state of California. And I know these issues are very important in education as well. So happy to chat about these issues, and thanks so much for having me on this panel.
I pay attention to what legislators are saying about AI, and Ted Lieu is one of the only people that's saying really, really cogent, important, smart things. And you're one of the main sources of optimism I have for policy in this space. So thank you, Ted. Because if you weren't there, there'd be a very steep drop off, honestly. Oh, really? It's a privilege to be sitting next to you on this panel. So one of the temptations of a panel like this is we say smart things and give you a sense of what the future is in the particular field. I have a two-word summary for where we are in AI and politics. We're fucked. Genuinely, because right now you have even something in these early days where Ron DeSantis will use AI in an ad against Trump. And if you think about, what is the negative consequence for him? Probably nothing. He actually gets some extra attention, some extra earned media. You had an AI-generated image of a terrorist attack, and then markets crashed for at least a little bit before they said, oh wait, that wasn't real. But then what is the cost to producing that false image? And then what could one gain commercially? If you imagine our political landscape, it's deteriorating very, very fast for a number of reasons. So I'm going to summarize the reasons and then put this AI phenomenon in context. So you have this polarization where Americans are getting shoved into corners and they think that the other side's the enemy. It's tearing apart families and friendships and communities. Then you have media organizations separating us into teams and tribes and say, oh, you like this team, you hate that team. Then you have social media pouring gasoline on the whole thing, and then you put AI inside of social media, and everyone's profit motivations are not towards trying to knit the country back together. It's trying to serve their individual ends, whether that's the media company or the campaign. So that's why it feels so nasty out there. The nastiness is going to get worse, not better. One of my great hopes is that the Asian American community actually is the problem-solving crew that tries to knit it back together, in part because I think that we naturally do fall between the two extremes. We're less ideological, we're more practical and pragmatic. But I also think it's mission critical for us, because if you were to list the communities that are gonna get thrown under the bus as America disintegrates into madness, I would suggest that we're pretty high on the list. You know what I mean? Like the spinning wheel of racism is kind of coming our way, and it's been coming our way since COVID. And so this does become a matter of self-preservation for us. But I don't want to cast any illusions where it's really terrible and it's getting worse.
I'm a happier person. Being part of the Silicon Valley, being part of the higher ed, I know the danger, know the problem technology can bring to us. But I'm pretty optimistic that we will harness this technology overall for the benefit for all of us. Let me give you an example. We all know we drive a car every day, right? And as a society, we decided driving car is norm. So we have all these regulation and safety. An automobile kill 36,000 Americans every year, right? So I just want to put things in perspective. A new technology will bring major problems. One problem is, when a student writes a wonderful paper in my class, I have no idea how to grade it because it could very likely to be done by AI. But the end of the discussion with myself and many of our faculty is this: how do we deal with this terrible technology or dangerous technology? Of course, the regulation, be careful, but there is a better technology, right? Just like, how do we deal with this messy democracy, the tearing apart the society? We have to work hard together on a better democracy. I know this the event is for younger people, so a couple of advice for all of us, but especially for younger people. If your degree is based on just checking the fact and repeat other people have done, those jobs will exist, but the number of jobs will be so few, only a few people will do those jobs, because those people with AI can produce 10 times or 100 times the performance. So what do we do? Well, the three things I would recommend we do. The first one is learn AI, right? Instead of being the one that replace, create something to replace other people. Second one is know how to create new things. So far, AI is good for assemble the previous example, but learn new things, create new things. But most importantly, number three, the technology even might approach human intelligence, but it never replaces human emotion and passion and love. So in your study, make sure you cover the kind of hardcore technology and math, but also always understand the underlying human emotion, human psychology, because at the end of the day, the technology has to serve us. Okay, so with that, pass on.
Hi, my name is Peng Wu. I'm currently a CEO for an AI technology company called Questa. Previously, I spent 14 years at Google. The last 6 years at Google was mainly focusing on building AI platform and products in Google Cloud. 2 years ago, I joined a company called Questa that's focusing on applying conversational AI into enterprise and customer interactions, mainly in contact centers. There are 25 million people globally that work in contact centers and call centers and the digital channels. We see great opportunity there to use AI to transform those interactions. Regarding this AI topic and politics and society overall, I have some thoughts over the years, and I think I will probably talk about three things. The first thing is really, I've been thinking about what's AI's impact on society, especially regarding politics. If you think about in the history, right, what information propagate and produce. In the beginning of time, humans, write things on bamboos or on stone. So at that time, most people are not, don't know how to read, right? But then with the invention of paper and printing press, the creation of that, the cost of creation and propagation and copy of the information goes down, and then more and more, larger and larger population know how to read, and the power of the media shifts. And then with the introduction of radio and telephone and TVs, and increasingly the propagation, the communication, the passing of that information becomes much cheaper and goes down to zero. And with internet, so much so as well. And then now with social media, what happens is that why such disruptive force is that not only everyone can read anything, but everyone can write things, and anyone can be a publisher, can reach to a lot of people. Now, just as Andrew said, I think what's scary about AI, especially generative AI technology, is that it turns previously only humans can do sensible stuff. Now AI can generate that, and then very, very sensible with images, now soon with videos and with deepfake voice that just sounds exactly as some political celebrity figure. That can really cause, pose challenge to the democratic system that created for many, many years before. So that's the challenge I see. But the second, I also see huge opportunity and huge benefit for all of us and for the society as a whole, is that AI will inevitably lead to abundance and then increasing productivity, and that's going to impact every corner of the society, and then eventually leads to prosperity. That's what I hope. And then if you look at the price index of the United States over the past 30 years, and there are two things that go up in price, inflation adjusted. One is education, another is healthcare. And then how do we, as a society, to get out of the debt? And then, that's fundamentally is increased productivity. And I do think that AI can have huge impact in education. And if you look at what are the jobs that will make much easier by AI, is the top 10 are mostly education, are teachers now, because AI can generate a lot of stuff, and then it can know what's the right answer, wrong answer, and then those are fact-based, and it can train people. So education, I hope, will the cost will actually go to zero over time, and at least with the technology can bring that, and then healthcare as well. There are a lot of information processing in healthcare. That's the hope, but also that the challenge is that it will cause elimination of some of the jobs, and then contrary to a lot of belief, I think a lot of jobs that get impacted most with generative AI is it's not the low-paying job, it's relatively high-paying jobs. And then 50% of the co-pilots, and now the code that chat into GitHub is actually generated by AIs. That's kind of replacing deflationary for programming jobs and for legals and these type of things. And then the third point I do want to touch on is that there's geopolitical sensitivity of AI. And if you think about all the AIs that are created today, it's definitely a lot of the benefit from GPUs, and then GPU is a critical commodity for AI, and majority of that, and it's critically, it's surrounded in East Asia, right? And that leads to a lot of geopolitical tensions, and then also inevitably because of the geopolitical tensions, and then that have implication to a lot of entrepreneurs and scientists that has look like us and in American society that may feel the challenge or some negative bias against where we come from and the loyalty to this country. Yeah.
That's great. I think our panelists touch on many points we we should dive further, deeper. But let's first talk about regulation, Congressman Liu. What do you try to accomplish? My question is that technology is moving very fast, and the Congress moves very slow. And so, to the extent Andrew called and Elon Musk called for a pause of AI development, once the Congress and government is very slow, if we look at crypto, blockchain as an example, today we're in a mess, right? We really don't know what to deal with the blockchain technology, and actually blockchain and AI are converging. So, what's your end game? How long will it take before this AI, already left us?
So if we were to say next week, let's regulate AI, I don't know what we would be regulating. I think because AI is moving so quickly, I think it's important that we actually take some time and see what happens. It is possible that all 37 harms from generative AI and other AI occurs. It's possible none of that occurs. Well, maybe just 3. There's a 4th harm we never thought of. So I introduced bipartisan legislation with Congressman Ken Buck, as well as Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, to create a national AI commission that will make recommendations to Congress as to what kinds of AI we might want to regulate and how we might want to do so. There's precedence for this in the Department of Defense military side. There was a prior AI commission chaired by Eric Schmidt, formerly of Google, and they had some pretty good recommendations, and people generally like how the commission performed. So this is the civilian version of it, and it's just very clear to me that it's much better to have a transparent process where you have experts that will show you what information they relied on, how they got to conclusions, and we can ignore it, or we can adopt some of it, or all of it, but at least legislators, the American public, I think will have a better sense of why it is we're regulating something and what's the reason for it and how we do it. And it's interesting you bring up blockchain, because my first instinct is, why would you want to regulate it? Give me a reason, and then we can look at it, right? So, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, let me just push that question a bit further. The reason I mentioned you're the only Stanford-educated member in the House and Senate for a reason, right? So for, again, draw the experience from crypto and blockchain, the senators who are trying to write a bill on the blockchain are from the farming states, right? From agriculture, because it's the agriculture committee oversights CFTC. So therefore the question really become very difficult for them to understand, right? To understand technology. So we may have to wait for more members of the Congress to become well educated. They may have to go back to school, go back to Stanford to get a degree before they can really understand what's going on.
So I have 2 answers to that. So the reason to have some time is it does allow legislators and the American public to get a sense of what generative AI is. I mean, we've had AI for a long time. The reason why I'll focus on it is because this new thing called generative AI came out, so I just encourage everybody to just try it out and you'll get a sense of it. But the other answer to your question is, the way legislators work, right? I will vote over 1,000 times in these 2-year cycles. And we are not really experts on anything, we're more generalists. So I don't honestly know how Boeing 777 actually works, but there was a FAA reauthorization bill that every member of Congress voted on. So you don't have to know, how neural networks work. As long as you understand, well, what are some of the harms that could happen from AI, and what are some of the benefits, and I think that's fine, right? I vote on stuff all the time of which I'm not an expert. I'll vote on things related to agriculture, and I don't know. But I do know what the committee did. I can read analyses and summaries. I don't have to be a farmer to understand why certain kinds of things may be good or bad. So I don't think you need to have a computer science degree to vote or write legislation on AI.
Okay, that's fair.
So I agree with the congressman that this technology is developing and shifting very, very quickly. And so I think that there should be a federal agency dedicated to regulating AI that does employ a ton of experts who are computer scientists. And I think there should be an effort to try and organize the world in this direction. I think you could at least get the EU on board. Because this does end up being global, and to Ping's point, there are geopolitical considerations that are coming that affect people that look like us very directly. And there are going to be folks trying to compete for compute resources to be able, and data to be able to generate the most powerful models and tools. Now, I do want to do a backdrop. One of the things I joke about is like, we should regulate AI the same way we did social media, and then people think about that. It's like, well, how did we regulate social media? It's like, I don't know, like, it's like 20-something years later, it's like still no one really knows. Because Section 230 of Nintendo this, it was like written before Facebook even existed. So you had this $1 trillion industry arise, and it essentially was left to quote unquote self-regulate, and that's super dumb. Now I don't expect there to be a 25-year lag on AI, but one of the things I do see is that there's a bit of a feeding frenzy food fight in terms of regulatory approaches. I like what Ted's trying to put together, but there's not consensus. And so no one's quite sure how it's going to develop. I think, I think a dedicated federal agency, I think there should be a cabinet secretary who this is their only thing. Just be like, essentially just get a secretary of AI and just say, because you need a single point of responsibility, you know what I mean? And then you can leave it to them to try and track the moving target. But there's not a lot of confidence among a lot of people, because we know at this point that, to your point, Congress sometimes moves quite slowly, or it doesn't move at all. In large part because we have this set of political incentives that make it so that good policy doesn't actually influence your political fortunes. You know what I mean? If anything, it actually might diminish your political fortunes if you did something that made a difference. Let's say that you were a bunch of members of Congress who came and said, we ought to regulate the shit out of these social media companies. I mean, it's like making our kids depressed, making us crazy, can't agree on truth and whatnot. Is that a political winner for them? I mean, there are a lot of companies right here in Silicon Valley that have been like, wow, I really freaking hate these people. Go after it. And so you have a system of incentives that don't necessarily lead to good policy. They can lead to the absence of policy. Now, the absence of policy on AI will be catastrophic. I think most people sense that. And so you're in a very, very tough spot, because you're like, okay, this unfettered technology is going to wreck a lot of stuff. It's going to destroy a lot of lives, and it might even threaten the entire planet or species. My hairstylist asked me, she's a very positive person, she's from California. She said, come on, Andrew, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I was like, let's see, like rampant identity theft, unwarranted military conflict, complete disintegration of any form of public truth or consciousness. And then she said, wow, you put it like that, it sounds pretty bad. I was like, yeah, it is pretty bad. And the things I just named are actually like fairly realistic in the zone of scenarios. And then there's the AGI scenarios that I'm not as concerned about. In a sense, Ted might not be either, which is the science, term like Skynet, Terminator, AI comes up and it's smarter than us and decides that that we don't matter. Things like that. Those are things that I'm not as concerned about. But I'm concerned about a bad actor saying, you know what, like I'm a terrorist organization, so for us, initiating conflict like that's kind of what we do. So it's a tough spot. You're in a zone where you really want to regulate the technology in some way, but you don't have much confidence in the regulators. Ted notwithstanding, Ted being an exception.
Yeah, please.
Very quickly, if a technology going to endanger our safety and life, please protect us. But if you think about it, I'm a student of innovation. Why is the most innovative place in Silicon Valley and as far away from Washington, D.C. as possible? If you look at that, it happened many places, for example, in China, Shenzhen is as far away from Beijing as possible, because indeed in the history, if it's politician making the future regulation, it will not regulate the technology right away, but people will say, okay, that is already blocked, let's not go there. So I think our government designed to have that balance and kind of designed to slow and really think over before make regulation. So as a person, as an educator, as a technologist, I would encourage, if something going to hurt our safety, please do it soon. But otherwise, watch it, see what happens before we move.
Yeah, so the safety definitely it's a big issue. The danger you guys are talking about. I think another big social issue would be the job displacement. Yeah. So I want Ping and Andrew. Maybe you guys can.
I'll give the mic to Ping, but I just want to say everyone should invest in Ping's company, because one of my talking points is like, when do you think AI is going to be able to do the job of call center workers? And then Ping's literally making that happen. So Ping, by the way, there are 2 million Americans who do that job of the 25 million worldwide.
Our company, we started with this co-pilot idea. It's more about augmenting humans rather than replacing them outright. And then our focus a lot of time is focus on sales use cases where you want to remind people and help them get better. To improve sales rather than improve efficiency. But I do think, agree with Andrew that it's inevitable that there will be a shift in the job market, and there will be folks that benefit from this type of job shift, and there are a lot of folks that not benefiting, and due to a lot of reasons they may not be able to kind of adjust their skills and to participate again in the market economy that the new jobs were created. So I think there are two thoughts here. One is really the social safety net and make sure that United States is a very prosperous and rich country, and then be able to kind of take care of folks that is kind of losing in kind of those market economy as the economy shift. On the other hand, there will be create but the longer term, I'm super bullish that because 65. Many years ago, maybe 100 years ago, right, 95% of the jobs were in the United States were in agriculture and farming. And that as society move on, now there are people that do the jobs that broadcast their life and make a living on YouTube. And these kind of jobs was not imaginable maybe 50 years ago.
Unfortunately, it's all of our kids' ambitions.
Yeah. So Andrew, what's your current thought on UBI?
About 43% of American jobs are either repetitive manual or repetitive cognitive. And one of the things that people have been surprised by is that ChatGPT is going to eat a lot of white-collar jobs, really, a lot of white-collar jobs. It turns out white-collar jobs might be easier to automate. I'm actually going to call your attention to something that's ongoing right now, which is that the actors are on strike as well as the writers. How many of you are from LA? So this is meant to be, they're estimating a $2 billion economic impact slowdown because no one's making TV or movies right now. And you know what one of the main issues is? AI. The studios have said, hey, you know what we want to do? We want you to be able to come in, record you, have you do a little twirl, and then use an AI-generated version of you. How does that sound? And then the actors are like, that sounds terrible. I don't want to agree to that. And then it's similar with the writers. They're like, hey, we'd love to use your scripts to just train our AI. How does that sound, writers? And the writers are also like, I hate it. So when is this strike going to end? This is the first time since 1960 that both the writers and the actors have been on strike at the same time. And by the way, the studios are hemorrhaging money right now. Some of the studios are actually looking up saying, ooh, I don't have to pay you for a while? Sign me up. And so one of the executives came out and said, this is going to get real when the writers start losing their houses in October or so. Now, that's a terrible sentiment, but how many of you think that that guy actually indicated their genuine stance? I mean, I do. Like, I don't think you, like, that's totally the way they're thinking right now. It's like, hey, because they're in a position right now. So we're talking about the folks that many of us would imagine to be some of the most accomplished, creative, successful people in our society, which is Hollywood writers and Hollywood actors, and totals about 175,000 people. And they are all getting kicked in the teeth in a way that's going to decimate the livelihoods of a ton of them. That's happening right now in front of our faces. And most all of and now some of those are not white collar because it also affects, guess what? Camera people, caterers, stylists, makeup artists. But you're shredding that industry for a period, and I think this is gonna drag on for months. I think so. I think it started whatever in earnest, maybe 3 weeks ago, or depending upon which union you take as the initial starting point. I think this thing goes on until fall, winter, and the deal that gets struck is going to be a terrible deal for people, probably. Now, this is one of the rare settings where you actually have a collective bargaining situation. What percentage of Americans are in a union?
About 7?
Yeah, it's like 9-10%, something along those lines. So for the folks in the call centers, are they in a union? No. It's going to show up. They make $17 an hour right now, and then they're going to be like, hey, guess what? Don't need some of you anymore, and then they're going to go home. So we're going to go through and do that right and left to a bunch of people. The more resilient jobs are going to be jobs that, frankly, most of us would not want to do. So one of there are non-repetitive manual jobs that are very, very resilient. And by the way, this is what we should be training Americans to do. It's very, very hard to get a robot plumber to your house. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna need a human plumber, human HVAC repair, human window retrofitter, but also a human hotel room cleaner. It's very hard to get a freaking robot to do that too. Now, so some of these jobs are pretty good. Like, we should be investing in technical and trade and apprenticeships up the wazoo in the US. By the way, that also would train non-college educated men who are really struggling in American life. And to the extent that they're struggling, some of them are going crazy, going down internet rabbit holes and getting drunk and deciding that person X is the enemy and whatnot. So these problems are tied together. But to me, it is a true fact that is incontrovertible that AI is going to wipe away millions of American jobs. And if you're paying attention, it's happening right now.
How about we talk about AI at election? The potential impact of the people use AI to help them to run their campaigns. Of course, back in 2016, whoever used Twitter in case of Trump actually got a lot of momentum versus Jeb Bush, for example. So what's your take on
I think I was supporting Jeb Bush. He says that with a note of pain in his voice.
And the Congressman, I know you wrote your the first AI bill legislation with ChatGPT.
So on your first question, I have two responses. When social media first came out, people were enthralled by it, people use it. And what you see over time is people have less and less trust in social media, which to me is a good thing. Because people started learning that, oh, maybe this post I'm reading isn't from someone down the block, it's actually from the Kremlin. So with AI, you're gonna see a period of that happen. You're gonna see folks be confused, or people are gonna look at videos and believe something's real when it's not. And then people are gonna start adjusting and go, okay, maybe that video is a deep fake. And there'll be, I think, some period of time. You can, my view is a whole bunch of people are gonna get scammed right now because AI, if you basically feed it half an hour's worth of someone's voice, they can mimic it pretty good. You give it 2 hours worth, it can be pretty amazing. And so folks are being scammed because they'll get a call from someone they think is like their son or daughter asking for money, and then they send the money. But I've helped people to figure out, okay, that was a little weird. I'm actually gonna call my son or daughter, see if that actually came from them. So I think over time people will learn as to sort of the bad effects of AI, and you can also use AI to counter other forms of AI. So Adobe is working on a way to authenticate images, to sort of say, okay, we're going to be able to show you that this image is the original one. And if it doesn't have that watermark, then you'll know it's not an original one. So I think there's ways to counter that. I also believe in disclosure. So if you watch a TV ad from a federal candidate, at some point it'll say, you know, I'm Ted Lieu and I approve this message. Social media ads don't have any kind of disclosure. And I'm co-author of a bill that will basically say you've got to disclose who paid for it. So in the future, if you know the Russians are going to run an ad supporting Donald Trump, at the end of it, or somewhere on it, it's going to have to say paid for by the Kremlin. So I think there are some ways you can use disclosure to reduce the risks of people getting misled in elections.
How many of you saw the video of Joe Biden stumbling and falling recently? Or falling off his bike? Let's try that. You're going to see hundreds of versions of Joe Biden stumbling and falling that are going to be AI generated if it winds up being Biden versus Trump. Some of them will be from the Trump campaign, some will be just from random people using AI. And it's going to be very hard to distinguish reality from fiction because you're just going to get bombarded by it. And the source, the provenance, is going to be unclear. Now, that's something that's very direct and obvious. There are going to be other pernicious, inobvious uses of AI during this cycle, 2024. I mean, this cycle is going to be awful, truly, truly awful. I know that there was a panel earlier about 2024, but I just want to lay out a couple things. So I'm, a numbers guy. So let's say it is Biden versus Trump, combined age 160. And a lot of folks are looking at this saying, okay, good, because Trump's the most beatable Republican. Trump is the heavy favorite to emerge from the Republican Party. Then you have Cornel West, who's running the Green Party. Cornel West, in my opinion, I saw one poll that had him at 5% recently. So a lot of people are not pumped about Biden or Trump, and they might just choose Cornel West as like a protest type thing. But I think a lot of his votes will come from the Democratic side, 80%, let's say. So let's say he gets 4 or 5%. That's enough for Trump to win, straight up. There's also no labels. I am hearing privately that Joe Manchin is telling people he's going to run for president, and if he decides to do so, then probably not 80%, but the models I've seen say 65% of his vote or so comes from Joe Biden. So there's a very, very realistic possibility that Trump wins and becomes president again, which I see as catastrophic for what's left of American credibility, institutions, democracy, et cetera, et cetera. He'd make his first term look like the paragon of sanity relative to the second term, because the first term he actually had some reasonable people around who kept him from doing some of the more crazy things he wanted to do. This time it would just be sycophants and fourth stringers and just total nut jobs running the country. And that strikes me as a very, very real possibility. I have some very smart people who tell me that they actually see this as the more likely scenario when I'm painting right now. And they also think AI is going to be a big part of it. They think that there's going to be all sorts of crazy stuff coming out of this campaign. One of the tough things about human nature is it's hard to unsee something. You know what I mean? Like I show you something, and then even if I tell you afterwards that wasn't real, you remember it. I mean, like there's a reason why people use negative ads. Negative ads, by the numbers, work. They do diminish your opinion of that other person. Even if afterwards you tell someone I didn't like that negative ad, it turns out that it worked on you. And so if you have a really low cost associated with both producing these things and disseminating them, then you're going to see probably not hundreds, but thousands of them.
But please go ahead.
So let me sort of say that everything Andrew says could be true. In fact, that could happen. It also might not happen. So there was an interesting poll that came out recently that showed Biden beating Trump even with third-party candidates. And the reason was, even though Democrats aren't particularly happy, some Democrats minority that are not very happy with Biden, they are freaked out about Donald Trump. And given a choice, they will stick with Joe Biden. Because it's not the same as 2016, where people, including me, were like, oh, Trump's just making stuff up, he'll be fine once he's president. No, people now know what he was like. And so I think defections from Democrats to a third party are going to be somewhat different, because this Democrat has to go, you know, I was okay with Donald Trump for 4 years. And if they're okay with that, then I don't know, maybe they're not really a Democrat. But anyways, I think this was a very instructive poll that recently came out. But there's a way to sort of, Andrew is absolutely right, you can't sort of unsee something, but there's a way to try to inoculate people by just telling them, hey, you're gonna see a lot of deep fakes out there. Or you can also flood, right? Flood the media and social media. You can just do a whole bunch of deep fakes of Donald Trump. And then at some point, people are just like, okay, we don't really know what we're seeing, right? So there are ways to sort of make it in such a way that you don't just see Joe Biden videos.
Yeah, so you both talked about the negative impact of AI in election. What about the benefits? If I want to be professional, to be more optimistic.
Thank you for remembering me as a happier person. First, a little nitty gritty. Yesterday, I gave a talk. You know, the AI is such a strong tool. I urge you or your staff need to look at AI as a tool in your campaign management. My partner, Dr. Daniel Yao, and I creating a online a little certificate program to train you or your staff to use technology, especially AI, so you can either enhance your operation or defend yourself. And remember, this is a campaign. The other side is using whatever tool to win. So I will urge you to not only thinking about the social media, the policy, the position, the charisma, but you have to have a technology plan. Okay? And in terms of coming back to the job market, as I mentioned, make sure you really understand the underlying human emotion and psychology. And remember, most of the job will exist. It's just the number of jobs will reduce. For example, accountant. Maybe if you want to serve a big company, you might take 30 accountants in a department. Now with AI, you may need 3. So the one can leverage the power of AI. You might triple your salary because you can do 10 person's job. But the one that cannot catch up, you will do, I don't know, plumbing, something. So as a whole society, I'm very hopeful. I think the society will move on. We will have new technology, even with social media. I see a proposal that if you, in the future, if you want to post anything that's political or even anything, just like when you drive a car, the car is dangerous. So you have to get a license. You have to get your ID. You have to get your fingerprint. I'm not sure we're going that way, but potentially you will say, hey, you want to post on social media? You have to be a real person, identify yourself. Then we can drastically reduce the fake news because we know who posted. So we can always find more solution than the problem. And coming back to Silicon Valley, the excitement part is that, wow, there are so many problems. There's a lot of money to be made when there's a problem. So I look at the kind of price.
So in terms of using AI for campaign in the positive way, I don't know if you or the candidates here have looked at Miami Mayor Francis Suarez's avatar. It's kind of interesting. Basically, his guys trained AI system, so voters can go online 24/7, ask him questions. Right now, it's still a little bit, not great because I just checked today. But I'm just curious if that's something you guys.
He's living my dream, Guangyang. My dream was to have an AI Andrew just talk to everybody. There's a guy running right now. I like Mayor Suarez relative to a lot of other candidates. You're probably friendly with him. There's a guy named Doug Burgum who's running for president right now who's doing something that I didn't think you were allowed to do, but it made me think. So right now you need 40,000 donors to make the debate on August 23rd. So he's giving anyone who donates $1 to his campaign a $20 gift card. So if anyone here really wants $19, you can go to Doug Burgum's website, donate $1, and he'll send you a $20 gift card. And I saw that and was like, wow, that seems pretty violative or rule breaking. But then you dig in and you realize that there actually is no enforcement body or mechanism right now because the FEC is supposed to be quote unquote bipartisan and it's deadlocked and it's like it's not going to enforce anything. So when you talk about the uses of AI, it's in that light. It's essentially in like a complete free-for-all Wild West zone. So, you know, like I'm into positive use of AI, like the way Mayor Suarez is using them. And I do think there's an opportunity for some of our candidates who might be in the room to be able to use AI tools as a force multiplier. Now, there are some things I think you're gonna have to do the old-fashioned way and you have to raise money, but maybe AI can help you raise money more effectively. You know what I mean? Like that there may be some opportunities for our community in particular.
Don, how much time do we have? Okay, I do have another question. Then I want the floor, have that opportunity to ask questions as well. I think that my last question will be really unique to our community, AAPI, when it comes to AI and politics or election, all right? Congresswoman Judy Chu was talking about even her loyalty was questioned. So moving forward, how the panelists think about this issue, including Ping, right? You work in the industry and they look at your last name, they look at your face, they say, you know, we probably don't want you to work on some sensitive projects, whether it's government projects or whether it's, you know, election related, for example.
Yeah, I think in our particular situation, you know, we're now working with government or defense, or you know, we're working mainly with enterprise and call centers. So that hasn't been an issue. But I do agree this can be a really challenge that faced by many, you know, Asian Americans or especially first generation Chinese Americans that, you know, even we're US citizens now, there may be questions around the loyalty and, you know, that may put us in the, everything else being equal, we may be discriminated against, you know, in the context of government contracts or security related deals or defense related projects. You know, that can be very real. I mean, I heard about security companies that started by first generation Chinese immigrants, although they're American citizens now, but they're basically shut out of the defense contracts. So if anything that, you know, possible be a level playground and have the free market economy.
So Congressman, what are you going to do about it?
So the question you asked is sort of way beyond AI, right? And first, let me just say, it was such a big deal for Andrew Yang to run for president and appear on that debate stage multiple times because it normalized, right? For a lot of Americans, that you have an Asian American running for president, it's totally normal. And so, thank you again for doing that. When you have people like Fiona Ma, right? Statewide position in California, the only position that requires more votes than a statewide position in California is President of the United States. Right? And so every time someone in California sees Fiona Ma, again, it normalizes that Asian Americans are American. Under the leadership of Judy Chu and KPAC, we now have the highest number of Asian Americans in Congress in US history. If you look at our demographics, the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities have more than doubled in size since 2000. And it's not just in places like California and New York, but also states like Nevada and Georgia, presidential swing states. And both parties are reaching out to AAPIs in a way that they haven't done before. So all of that is good. And we do have to fight back against discrimination and hate crimes and so on. But I do feel optimistic if our community can register to vote, speak out, and continue to fight for what is right.
Thanks. A guy I know named Sue Kim in New York City tried to buy some local TV networks Do you know about this deal, Ted? And he essentially got sandbagged because they didn't want an Asian person owning media in various parts of the U.S. And Sue went to Stuyvesant, New York, and but he said, he's like, I wasn't actually that much of like community flag waver. He's like, but now I am because of what happened here. I mean, incredibly grateful to leaders like Ted Lieu, who not only served in Congress but also served our country in the military. I mean, it's like people like Ted make it very, very obvious that we are Americans, but we shouldn't have any illusions about the fact that Americans, by and large, are marginalizing and kicking Asian Americans and Chinese Americans to the curb, in large part because they think there's no consequence. There's no consequence to them politically or culturally. So one of the things that I said to some people at the Taft gathering is that Asian Americans have this much economic power, this much cultural power, this much political power. And we have to try and translate some of this into this and this. Again, it's one reason why folks like Ted and Fiona and others are so important, is because we are still the most underrepresented community in terms of electoral politics. So the folks who actually do run and win, or even if they run and don't win, like, we need to do a better job of getting behind them. Our community is in the early days of building that kind of structure and unity. It's one reason why what Don has done at Asian American Forward and Guangyang and others trying to pull us together in this kind of room is so important, because there aren't that many rooms like this in the Asian American community. There really are not. We are punching in some ways way below our weight class. Evelyn commented too, it's like, why stick a jail in Chinatown? They won't fucking do anything about it, was the thought. It's like, I try and stick that in another community, they're gonna fight back, but it's like, I can ram this down the Chinese American community's throat, and no one's gonna care and listen to them, et cetera, et cetera. So that stuff's happening to us in ways big and small. It is, I'll be honest. And the question is, how are we going to be able to grow past that, or fight through the 11,500 anti-Asian attacks over the last couple of years and everything else? It's going to be a lot. I'm going to suggest it's going to take people doing things that they maybe haven't done before, activating people in our community who right now are doing what many of us were taught to do by our parents, which is just keep your head down and do a good job, and it'll all work out. Now, the folks here in this room have realized that will not work. So we're trying to do something much, much bigger. I'm going to say something that may be, it may be suggested in a particular way. I think we have a lot to learn from the Jewish community. I think the Jewish community has been through versions of this, and then they developed structures and institutions and their community in a way that makes it very, very clear that there is a very real consequence to doing something negative to someone in that community out of hostility or hatred. And they do not think that about the Chinese American or Asian American community yet. And the question is, what's going to change their mind?
That's great. Let's open up to the floor. How about you?
Hi, Congressman Liu. I was excited to hear that you're working on an AI bill, bipartisan, with Congressman Ken Buck and Congresswoman Eshoo. I actually worked with Congressman Eshoo as a student advisor for data privacy, specifically biometric data protection, because, as you know, hacking is a big issue. Passwords, social security numbers, but it's also a potential issue for data like your DNA or your retina scans, your fingerprints, because passwords can be changed, those can't. So I'm wondering what you think about the issue, if that's going to grow in size as AI becomes bigger as an issue, and what can Congress do to protect biometric data protection?
So thank you for that question. It's about biometric data protection, but also just about privacy in general. And the internet age has reduced our privacy. In exchange for that, we get free internet, right? So that was a trade-off. Whether or not that was good or bad, I think historians can judge, centuries later, decades later, but that is the trade-off right now. And my view is we need to do better on privacy. So I'm a big supporter of privacy. AI will make it worse, unfortunately. So the generative AI large language models are amazingly good at hacking. Thank goodness the people that created them right now put guardrails in so you can't type in, hey, how do I hack, Bank of America? So you can imagine a company or a country not putting those guardrails in, right? And so that is a problem. And my best advice to anyone here is you just have to step up your own privacy protections and assume that you may, one day get hacked, and what would you do if that were to happen? And if you're an institution or organization or CEO of a company, what happens when you get a ransomware attack, right? And do you have backups of your files? How good is your cyber security? So it is absolutely a problem. It's probably going to get somewhat worse, and there's no real good solution to that. You just have to have individuals be more aware of their own data and how to protect it. And to me, the best analogy is it's like a house, right? So if you leave your door unlocked, much more likely you might get something stolen. So you could put a lock on it. You could put better locks on your door. You can install a home security system. But at some point, if a organized mob wants to enter your house, they're going to enter your house. Or if, a group of Russian trained mercenaries wants to enter your house, they're going to enter your house. So just be aware that everything is potentially at threat in terms of your data and privacy, and just try to take steps to make it so that it's not as easily hackable or discoverable.
Is there something Congress can do to protect like biometric data privacy, like fingerprints, retina scans, DNAs, stuff like that we can't change?
So it would depend on what you mean by protect, right? Because Congress doesn't really protect anything. It's going to be up to individual companies to protect it. And so Andrew mentioned a very important word early on, which was the word incentive. You tell me what the incentives are, and I'll tell you what is likely going to happen. So yes, there are ways you can incentivize companies or governmental institutions to protect biometric information. You could, for example, have a private right of action that allows anyone to sue if a company screws up, right? There are different ways you could do to incentivize it. State governments could do that too, right? The state of California could give you a private right of action to sue companies in court. So it is something that I think people might want to consider and look at.
One more question.
First one update, Congressman Liu about you mentioned about when you want to check whether that person is real, just call it.
I'm sorry, what?
When you mentioned about the fact that whether you want to check whether the person is real, just call them to confirm.
Whether you can call.
That is currently not the case. So Gen AI today can easily mock that people's voice and even mock how people's video calls. Even the video call you receive could be fake. So that's something about it. So my question is more about my concern about the Gen AI, about the Andrew talk about Gen AI will wipe out a lot of jobs. And we know that the major benefit of Gen AI is to increase productivity, right? So people know about Gen AI, some people know it fast, some people know it very slowly, and that will increase the gap of of our society already very differentiated. And Mr. Wu mentioned about several hundred years ago we have 95% is agriculture, then we moved to industrial revolution, which switched that population to industrial jobs. That's very good. That's a strong evidence that we should not worry about it. But that could be just purely we're lucky at that time, because at that time U.S. is.
So what's your question?
The question, okay, maybe get the question. Question is, we talk about a lot about to regulate AI. Are we thinking about how to educate our country to more like prepared for this Gen AI area, so that our social gap won't be increasing because of this productive change?
So I think Andrew Yang was way ahead of his time when he really championed UBI. I think at some point we're going to need a version of universal basic income, because there's just going to be more and more people with skills society no longer needs, right? And what do you do with that? Now, my view is generative AI can also be good in terms of work and leisure, right? So if you look at the arc of human civilization, we have worked less over time. So we were, right, a long time ago, 7 days a week hunting and gathering to survive. Then we discovered tools and farming and other inventions, and it went to 6 days a week. And then it went to 5 days a week. And now we have 5 days a week with vacation time. So with generative AI, I was talking to Amazon, and they have, for example, Amazon Code Whisperer. It's autocomplete for writing code. And they said their programmers are 30% more efficient. So if you just sort of look at that, that means a current software programmer using AI will do more in a 4-day work week than they do right now without AI in a 5-day work week. Well, what do we do with that? So I vote for the 4-day work week, by the way. But maybe they made their programmers work 30% harder. Or maybe they, fire a third of their programmers. I don't know. There's going to be significant labor disruption. I'm not sure government can do very much about that. It's just going to happen. But we can prepare people for that by letting them know this is about to happen. You go try to figure out in your own lives how you're going to prepare for this thing that really cannot be stopped.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I think, as Andrew said, I think, contrary to a lot of people thinking, I think the job first getting disrupted will be relatively higher paid jobs in the marketing. Anything that type of jobs that your output is in digital, are like one type of digital, coding, legal, or marketing copywriters, and arts, that will be getting impacted most. And from my perspective, I'm thinking about there are two things, specifically to answer the question, is that if we think that a future is inevitable, then we just really want to be well positioned to that. I mean, there's some ideas. Number one is really just change our immigration policy. I mean, you see the Canada that really, they open up their immigration policy and then based on skill-based immigration. I think that's long overdue. I mean, there are a lot of very talented people that want to come to this country and let that happen. And if it's a talent war, that's, United States well positioned to win that. And then number two, I actually think that, those kind of jobs that it may be displaced, is relatively in the relatively white collar jobs. But there are huge opportunity. I do think there's bringing manufacturing kind of jobs. It's not very easy to disrupt by generative AI, but can benefit from the deflationary forces into the country. And I think that's inevitable. That there will be more and more manufacturing jobs that aided with robots that may make the economic works for coming back to the United States economy.
Great, it has been an amazing 1 hour. As we all can tell, there are many exciting topics on the AI issue. We're just scratching the surface, and all those topics itself can become a session down. So one day we probably should follow up legislation, job placement, election, data security, all those issues. And we're very lucky as a community to have those leaders. AI is here, AI is going to develop, and let's make sure our community continue to make a great contribution to the AI for the benefits our entire society. So thank you very much. Please join me, thank our panelists again.